Yeah, so class, just so you know, within the module, this cost sharing Excel um, sheet information is in there for you to use for developing budgets. So thank you, Robin.
Yeah, there's a lot of materials. If you go to the Canvas modules and look in module number 3 for week 3, this program is there. I think it's actually in the homework and the resources under the homework.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's under resources.
Okay. And we sell this at Rutgers for $100. So we thought it would be nice to include for people that registered for the class tonight. And it was developed several years ago for greenhouses, but we keep adding features to it. It was developed for greenhouses because at that time, and I think still now in New Jersey and other places, greenhouse growers grow a lot of different crops, and they tended to just focus or depend on what their accountant told them at the end of the year, whether they made money or not. So they knew whether they made money for the whole operation, but they didn't really know which crops were making or losing money. So this is basically a cost accounting program, or a program that would generate enterprise budgets was the main purpose. But one of the reasons I wanted to introduce it tonight is because you are developing your financial plan, which you'll hear more about the basics later from our Farm Credit East folks who are speaking. And they're going to ask you to develop an income statement and a balance sheet and probably a cash flow statement. So over the years, we've added all 3 elements to the program. I just wanted to point out, for some reason, the new, at least my computer, and I think Madeline's as well, is not allowing these macros to work. We're supposed to see, it says income statement and balance sheet. And when I click on that, it says it's not available because they don't trust the source. So they disabled the macros, but the program still works fine without them. All that macro would do would be to take you to these tabs down at the bottom. Can you see my arrow pointing?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we can go to those tabs just by coming down to the bottom and clicking. And so the first tab is the income statement. And as you see, I have greenhouse crops here and then outdoor crops, because what we realized is even greenhouse owners had started differentiating even more than they already were with multiple crops by growing crops outdoors. And to do the cost accounting, because greenhouses are a high investment facility, we looked at the overhead cost as per square foot per week. Whereas if you're producing outside, your cost would be different. So if you're growing both greenhouse crops and outdoor crops, with this program, you can take your information from your income statement and divide it between those 2 operations. And if you're only growing outdoor crops or even livestock, you could just put it in this outdoor category, because the overhead costs are going to be calculated differently. And you're going to hear more about overhead costs versus variable cost later on in the program as well. But this program comes preloaded with data from a survey we did of New Jersey growers several years ago. But the totals are then calculated on a percent of sales basis. And I've noticed that over the years that I've been working in the industry, these percentages actually stay fairly similar. The numbers, of course, keep going up in terms of dollars, and especially this last year, as we just heard from the poll. But so if you happen to be a greenhouse owner, that might give you something to compare your cost to. So we have the what we call variable or direct cost here that you put in, and you can override these categories and put in the categories that you need for your farm. Then we look at salaries, wages, utilities, and then what we tend to call fixed or overhead costs, typical ones. And again, you can, if yours are different categories, you can change that. So then if you put in all, so you can delete these numbers that are preloaded and add numbers for your farm, or save this if you want to have it just as a backup of what some numbers for greenhouses in New Jersey look like, and then start one for your own farm. Put in your numbers from your income statement from last year, and it will calculate your percentage of sales. And then because we wanted to also calculate ratios, as you see in the next tab here. Just going back, if you scroll down, we also put in balance sheet information, but because to calculate a lot of the ratios, you need information from your balance sheet. And again, you're going to talk about that later on. But to do the cost accounting for the greenhouse operation, then it it asks how big is your greenhouse and how many acres do you have outdoors? And then because these costs are fairly high, if you're not using all that space, you need to account for the unused space, because otherwise you're going to think you're making more money than you are. So it asks what percentage of your space do you use, because you have aisles and kind of unused space. And then how many weeks are you in operation, so that it can calculate the cost, and then it'll compare what you came up with to what your total of your overhead costs are. So for your homework for next week, I would just start putting in, take your income statement from last year, put it in this program, and look at your percentage of sales. And then you can track that over several, keep in the future going back or forward and see if you're changing. And this might help you make some financial goals for your business. Also, the same thing with your balance sheet. Take your balance sheet here and put in your information from last year. And then you can track over time how your net worth is changing. And also, once you put in all the income information from your income statement and your balance sheet, then your ratios are automatically calculated here. And I took the 17 top ratios from farm management specialists across the country who thought these were the important ones that we should use for agriculture. There's also many others that you can use. But what I did is try to make it a teaching tool. So the first column shows you what the ratio is. The second column shows the figure. It says your figure, and this is based on that preloaded data right now. And then the third column is sort of taking the average from those different fact sheets across the country of what they're recommending for a typical agricultural business. Then the formula written out, what it is, and then just an explanation of what it means. So we try to make a little concise tool to help you with ratios, because a lot of times people are confused about when they throw out profit, what it really means. And I've always felt you need to subtract all your costs, including your salary, before you get down to looking at what profit is. So then this is where you can do the cost accounting if you want to get more sophisticated. And actually it lets you put in what your enterprise is here, and then it asks all the different costs going across this way. And you can do the same down here for outdoor crops, outdoor labor, and then it calculates a lot of things for you. I don't think we want to get into all the details of what it does, but it does a lot of interesting things and gives you results at the end. Because when you put in those crops, then it starts allocating overhead costs per crop. So it shows if you've allocated everything or not. And see, in this example, I didn't allocate all the salary, so that's going to be calculated as part of the overhead cost. But I just wanted to get to the end because we have a cash flow statement. So this one is the cash flow statement. And what we find sometimes is businesses can be profitable, but they can still go bankrupt because they can't pay their bills. And this is can be a big problem in agriculture, because normally you're not prepaid. CSAs was one way of capturing the money up front, but they seem to be going out of favor, as we heard last week. But so in general, with most farm businesses, you pay for the labor, you pay for the seeds, you harvest the crop or the livestock enterprise, and then you collect the money, and often you have to wait. So you may not have the cash when you need it to pay your bills. So the cash flow statement is really taking all the cash costs that are basically the same costs that are on your income statement, except for depreciation, and then allocating them to what months that you pay them. And so what this program does is kind of takes that from your income statement and then has you divide it each month. So it totals up what your cost will be and where you have a deficit. So you see in January, we're paying for seeds, we're paying for labor. We have a deficit here of $449,000. And we don't start getting positive till over in May when we start selling things. So it would be really important if you were a business like this to have a source of funds to pay these bills, probably a credit line or something like that, so that you can cover the cost until you receive the income from your produce or greenhouse products in this case. So that was the main thing I wanted to go over. There's some other resources there in Canvas, the ag plan from the University of Minnesota. In week 1, there's the plan, Rutgers workbook. So some resources to help you develop your financial plan for next month. Do we have any questions?
Robin, I
Madeline?
had a quick question. It was hard to see. Sorry, this is Rouet, but I don't have my video, but anyway. So it was hard to see on the spreadsheet, but I appreciate how you were looking at the monthly, the month to month. But in my experience, just because I have really, I guess the great word would be dynamic, but maybe it's more like volatile harvest year to year. So like one year, a certain crop will look like it's a really great investment, but actually on the 10-year average, it's not. And so I'm just wondering, is that this, we have greenhouses, but I'm not as much the nurseryman. So did I miss how you're working on that piece of it? Like not just like the planning of what your profits are in a year, but more kind of longer term than 1 year, because sometimes I get really excited 1 year only to realize that it's not that exciting in the long run.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Let me go back.
I think I might have, it was hard to see the way the thing was
this program does a lot, and I only had like 10 or 15 minutes.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Um,
We're still good
but-
on time, Robin. So
Pardon? We're good on time?
we're still good on time. We've about
Okay.
10 minutes.
So
So
let me just go back here. My suggestion, to answer your question there, is to do this for, the good thing about owning this program is you can do this every year and you can just keep adding columns
Okay.
yourself. And that was what I was trying to emphasize at first, is this gives you sort of an average of New Jersey, but what's more important is an average for yourself, is keep comparing this to yourself year after year. And also when you do the cost accounting, there's a results section that here it tells you the profit or loss per crop. So you don't want to keep track of that every year.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Yep. That makes sense.
Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, it's agriculture is really volatile, and now things that are happening in the economy are making it. Oops, I think I thought I was sharing before, and I don't think I was. Did you see this screen before with it's the cost per crop every year? Then you can just keep those records, maybe do a different spreadsheet every year.
Yeah, I just didn't pick up on that. Yeah, I'll just keep a different spreadsheet, but yep, of course.
Robin, it seems like that would be helpful too if you're thinking of growing a new crop, to work the numbers to see if it would pay off.
Yeah, I get a lot of people buying this program if they're not in business yet, so they can do what ifs, and they want to come up with, what the crops are. And I would definitely, that's one of the suggestions I have for using the program, is before you do it and start losing real money, look at what's happening here. I put in sort of a hypothetical business. Let's see. I can share screen again. Because in the past, what most growers did is bedding plants were the big money making crop. And so they grow those in the spring and they go, well, what do I do the rest of the year? So they grew poinsettias. Well, then there wasn't as much for that demand for that many poinsettias as there were for bedding plants. So people said, oh, we're not making money. We're going to, we stopped growing them. But if you take them out of this equation, the problem is they're covering a lot of the overhead cost. So then you start losing money on just about every other crop. So this is a really great program to do some of that what if before you actually do it for real and lose real money is. And again, you can easily modify this for other things. You could put chickens and pigs and things in here and just to change the labels at the top, so it's the same concept. It was designed when you're growing more than one crop to see which ones are making money, which ones are losing money. And, in a greenhouse, what you want to compare is the cost per square foot per week. So you can see right here that in this example, petunias are the ones that you're making the most money on. So if you can sort of analyze this kind of information this time of the year when you're slower, if there's some way that you can increase sales of petunias, that's definitely what you should do, because that's the crop that's making you the most money right here. So hopefully this is helpful to everybody. And we have a lot of the cells in the program protected so that you can't change them, just so you can't mess up the formulas, but some of them, like the names of things, you can change.
Yeah, that's very helpful. There's sometimes something I find sometimes challenging is getting prices for different items. So maybe we could have like a discussion about where you usually like what kind of websites and things you like to use for different types of supplies, just to give an idea on pricing. Sometimes it's really hard too, because a lot of vendors don't like to publish a price in case they need to increase it, especially like with supply chain issues. But does anyone have any sources that they've used for getting pricing on different farm items, or not to endorse anything, but
Yeah,
sometimes it's hard to get that
that's a
information.
good point, because I'm trying to do some crop budgets, because that's always requested, and of course I'll come up with just sort of an average. Everybody's are different, but just trying to come up with numbers that are reliable is hard.
Sometimes it's helpful, like with the vegetable growers convention, sometimes going to trade shows and meeting with the different vendors, that can be a helpful way to get an idea what some of your costs might be.
It's true, and that's a good plug for next week, or the week after next. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Would you like to talk about that, Robin? Because a few people are asking.
We gave a break for 2 weeks, because next week, I guess, is the big Pennsylvania vegetable and fruit trade show and conference. So we didn't want to compete with that. And then the week after is our New Jersey ag convention. So we actually are having a whole day workshop on Thursday looking at tax and finance issues. And we have those same speakers also giving talks on Tuesday and Wednesday. So part of your registration for this course is allowing access to all the convention, the ag convention. It includes your membership in the New Jersey Vegetable Growers Conference for 1 year, because basically they are the sponsor, and the membership includes your admission to the convention and trade show. So if you haven't been before, it's a great way to make contact with other farmers, to learn things. There's multiple sessions, educational sessions going on. And I think we sent you information, didn't we, Mark, in the registration on how to get there. Everybody that indicated they were planning to go to that trade show, we are giving their names to the vegetable growers. So you should have a name tag there at the registration booth when you get to Atlantic City. So hopefully I'll see you there.
Oh, someone asks if you can bring a guest.
We would, I guess, I think you'd probably have to pay for them. I don't think it's a lot. Do you know what it is? What the registration fee is, Madeline?
Well, sorry, Ruay here. I know in normal, like if you get a membership, you have yours, and then the guest is $25. So it's really not a lot.
Not much.
Oh, wow, that's really reasonable.
So
thank you.
Hopefully you can bring the guest. Thank you for that, Ruay.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions for Robin about the cost accounting or the vegetable growers convention? Okay, thanks, Robin.